Hello Year 10. So today we're going to talk about Section C of the exam paper. Section C is an evaluation of a live performance. So on Wednesday I will be sharing with you a performance for you to watch, and that will be the live performance, and you are going to be evaluating it. Okay, so just to talk through what you'll be expected to do. First thing is to remember the key skills that you're going to be talking about. So I've put them up on this presentation again just to remind you. Vocal skills, physical skills, and space and interaction. Okay. When you do this, you'll go to Section C of the exam paper. What you'll see is there are actually 3 questions, question 11, 12 and 13. You should only go to question 11. You're only expected to do 1 question. The other 2 will be on some sort of production element, costume, set, lighting, props. We're not covering this, okay? We focus on acting. So the first thing to do is go to Section C, go to question 11 and read through the question. And what I would advise is to underline the key points, to think about what it is actually asking for. And always remember that when you start the answer, you are clearly stating the play that you are evaluating at the very beginning. So, question 11. Here's an example of a question 11. Describe how one or more actors in a particular scene or section use their vocal and physical acting skills to create convincing characters. Analyse and evaluate how successful they were in communicating their character to the audience. So this question doesn't vary too much from exam paper to exam paper. It is always going to ask you to describe how actors have used their skills. It is always going to ask you to analyse and evaluate the use of those skills, because that is in the grade criteria. The things that could vary, for example, in this one it asks for 1 or more actors. So you could simply talk about 1 actor. It may, in other exam papers, say talk about 2 different actors. It generally does always say a particular scene or selection, but I've also seen one where it said describe how 1 or more actors have used their physical and vocal skills in 3 separate scenes. So it might be quite specific and ask you to talk about 3 different examples. So it's really important to read through the question. What exactly are they asking? Okay. And we can see here that this is saying about how the actors have used their skills to create convincing characters. I've also seen where it's asked where actors have used their skills to communicate and create emotion. Okay? And it will ask you to make reference to the use of voice, physical skills, and the actor's use of space, which relates back to those skills that I showed you at the very start. So again, going back to these skills on the PowerPoint. Okay, so what is the mark scheme asking for? The first section, you get marks out of 12 for this, is the description. What skills are used and how are they being used? Explain and describe their use so the examiner can imagine it. Okay, so if, for example, if we think back to watching Nora, when we were looking at A Doll's House, the first thing I need to do is make sure I'm describing the skills that she uses. It might be that I talk about her accent or pace or pitch or body language. And the more skills I talk about, the better, the further I get up the grade boundaries. But I've also got to explain and describe how they've been used, and again being quite specific. So I might take a quote and use a line of Nora's and explain how she delivers that line, saying about about the accent that she uses or the tone of voice, and her body language or gesture. And the more descriptive and the more specific I can be, the better, because then the examiner's going to imagine it. Now, obviously, it is more than likely that the examiner will not have seen the same performance as you. So actually, the more descriptive you are, the better, because if they can sort of visualize it, this shows that your descriptive skills are very good. So that's one part of the mark. So you can get 12 marks for the description. The next part of the marks, and this is out of 20, so this is the main part, is looking for evaluation and analysis. Now, when we evaluate, it's thinking about what is good, what could be improved. How was it, has it had some sort of impact on you as an audience member? Do you think it was successful? And if we think back to the exam question, it asks you about how these actors are communicating their characters. So if I was evaluating, I'd be thinking in this moment, how successful were they in communicating to me who the character was, their personality, their status, their age. So what's key though is the evaluation is happening throughout. Also what they're looking for, and these two do tie together, is analysis. What was it communicating about the character? If you talk about the fact that somebody has raised their pitch, what does that show about the character? It might show that actually they are getting more worked up and angry. It might show that they're sort of quite a stressed individual that is easy to upset. So as you talk through, you are saying what skills have been used, what these skills have communicated to the audience, and whether or not you think it was good or not. And they all tie in together. So what I've also done for you is I have, if I just come off here, I've also attached for you the grade descriptors, and I've broken it down for you a little bit so you can sort of get an idea of how you can get the higher grades. So looking at band 4, which is the top band, they're looking for an extensive range of skills described. So I'm sort of saying maybe 13 to 18, but this is really saying that, you know, have you talked about pitch, pause, body language, mannerisms, facial expressions, proxemics, levels, and actually actors use lots of skills and use these skills together. So what you have got to do is you've really got to, when you watch the performance, you are going to pick a couple of examples, 1 or 2 moments where you feel that actually you feel an actor's done very well in communicating their character or creating emotion. And you've really got to look at it and go, well, what skills have they used and how they use them? And it really is about the little things that they've done. Breaking eye contact says a lot. Suddenly getting louder, crossing your arms. Instantly we're sort of communicating something to the audience. If we break eye contact, that person no longer wants to look at that person. Maybe that's because they're lying. Maybe it's because they're upset. Maybe it's because the other person's done something. If we cross our arms, it's quite defensive. It might be a protection because the other person is having a go at the character. It might be defiance because they feel that actually they're right and the other person's wrong. So what's quite nice about this is that it's about your interpretation. If you think that crossing the arms is a defense, then you're right, because that's your interpretation as the audience. So once making sure the skills you do talk about are appropriate, that they are showing something, and that your description is exact. Can you really imagine what is happening? And there's lots of information given. Okay, and looking for precise detail. So again, using quotes can be quite good because you can explain and describe how a line has been specifically delivered by an actor. And the good thing with having actually that we are going to be watching a video of a live performance gives you a chance to go back and really analyse a small section in detail in preparation. As you can see, there's also marks for the evaluation and analysis, as I said. They do go hand in hand. Now, the excellent analysis is that you really understand what is being communicated and how it's communicated to the audience. And that links to the skills. These actors are using their skills in order for you to understand something, either about their emotions, their relationships, their character. As soon as I say to someone, right, you are a young 21-year-old girl, you're very bossy, you come from a rich background, automatically you are starting to think about how you use your body language and your posture and your voice to communicate that character. This is exactly the same process these actors have gone through. So depending on the question, what is it that's being communicated? And actually, if it does ask you about convincing characters, that will link to their emotion, their relationships. Excellent evaluation. This needs to be throughout. Constantly thinking, is something effective? Was it used well? Was it creative? And actually to justify why you think something was good. What impact does it have on the audience? How does it make them feel? What does it communicate? And this is why analysis and evaluation are together. Because actually, if you justify why something's good, it usually links to your analysis. So I could say that Nora's use of her body language, where she crosses her arms, shows that she's defensive. Or I could say when Nora uses her body language and crosses her arm, it's really effective because you instantly see that she's trying to protect and defend herself. So I'm analysing as well as evaluating simultaneously, and that's what's quite crucial. And it's looking for that you've got examples given throughout. So what you'll also see that I have given you is some sample answers. So there's two. One is from the exam board, the noughts and crosses sample answers. If you go to page 30, you'll see a sample answer there. And here is another model answer that I've created. If you read through that, I think what you'll see is that actually it's about analysis and evaluation throughout, and it's about being very sort of detailed. What I added to this was actually a list of all the skills, and as you can see, I've only done a paragraph. I've not completed. This is not a complete evaluation. It's to give you an idea. But what I have done is think, well, what skills have I talked about? And as I say, the next paragraph that I would write, if I was writing more, I would try and look at some of the other skills, because the more skills I talk about, the higher I go up the grade boundaries. So I've put here as well about what things I've tried to do, try to have a range of skills, try to be as exact and precise so the examiner can actually imagine what the actor is actually doing. I've shown how the character has been interpreted, so I'm showing that I understand who the character is, what their personality, status, relationships, objectives, emotions are like. And I've also tried to add the analysis in. What is each skill communicating? I've tried to really break it down actually, and also try to evaluate throughout, thinking whether or not I think it's been done well. Now, most of the things we'll be picking moments where actors have done very well, and we're looking at professional actors, so we know they have done well. But there can be times where we might have done things slightly differently. So don't feel afraid to say, I would have done it differently, or I think this wasn't as effective in communicating with the audience. And I've always tried to justify, okay? So yes, hopefully this will all help. What I want you to do today is to go through the sample answers and to really think about what should be included in an evaluation. You all wrote an evaluation which Sir marked for you from A Doll's House, which you can also look back at and see what feedback you got from him. And on Wednesday you will be watching a performance, so that the week after you will actually be doing a Section C question. Okay, thank you very much.